Hi, this is Oliver and welcome to our new tutorial. And first I'm going to show you what we will create. So this is what we like to create today. And the cool thing is you need no third parties. It's 100% After Effects, nothing which comes from extern. Everything is built-in plugins. So that's what we like to do. So first, the idea is not from ourselves, because I found that on Andrew Cramer's site 2 years ago, and he was experimenting with some of these effects, and I was fascinating, but simply waiting for the tutorial. But it's 2 years old and nothing so far. I think he's a busy man and everybody can understand that, and we learned so much from Andrew Cramer. So that's why we try to figure out how he did these kind of effects. And yeah, that's what we did, and I think we're really close. And let's get started. First, make a new composition, file new composition, sorry. We have a cinemascopic view which is 2016 by 858, and we have 25 frames a second, and we have a duration of 20 seconds, but you can use settings as you like. Black background, and hit OK. So the first thing is we need inside this comp our logo. For that, this is our logo. I drag that into the composition, and let me position that so that it fits. So this is the part of the logo I'd like to have, and we need first to build mask from that logo. So for that we go to Layer and say Auto Trace, and if you hit the preview button here, you get a very nice idea how that will look like. So one thing to keep in mind: make sure that your tolerance is something about 2 or 1, because I will showcase you that what happens if you are here too small. I mean, if you here go to, let's say 0.1 and you hit OK, this is the result of the layer. So you got a ton of anchor points, and that slows down After Effects a lot. So make sure that you get a nice balance between the final masks and the anchor points according to the geometry you'd like to have. So let me get rid of this, delete. I go to Layer, Auto Trace. Let me take 1, and because this is a vector file, I have a perfect alpha channel, so I use the alpha channel to do the auto trace. I give the corner round is something about that, the minimum area to, let's say, 28, which looks fine, and threshold also up to 25, so that should give us a good result. As you see, I'm fine with that, and I hit OK. So now I got much less anchor points, and it's much easier for After Effects to handle that. So next is, I'd like to delete all of these parts here. I just only need that shapes here. So I select one of the shapes, and then select all of the rest shapes, and simply delete them on my keyboard. So I have my masks here. So now I can delete that here, delete. So I only have a layer with my masks on it. If you hit MM on the keyboard, you see everything is masked. So the next thing is we like to have shape layers, because for that we need shape layers, no masks. And to create shape layers from mask, it's very easy. You can do by following. First, select the path and copy them. String C on the keyboard, or Option Mac, I think. Option C on a Mac. Command C on a Mac. Whatever. If you're a Mac user, you know that. String C on the keyboard. Go to Layer, New, and say Shape Layer. Then grab the pen tool and simply click somewhere on the canvas and hit on String V on the keyboard to paste that. So you copy the path, you make a new shape layer, click somewhere with the pen tool, and paste that path. So the next, we repeat that, second path, String C on the keyboard, Layer, New, Shape Layer, click in somewhere, String V on the keyboard, and you see it fits exactly where it should be. Next, again, next path, String C on the keyboard, Layer, New, Shape Layer, click in there, String V on the keyboard, and I got this. And the last one, select the path, String C on the keyboard, Layer, New, Shape Layer, click in here, String V, And here we have the logo. So let me get rid of this. I can delete the masks for now. And the next, I have 4 shape layers that represents my logo. I select all of them, hit A on the keyboard, and bring the anchor point to the center where I'd like to have it. So here we go. Oops, wrong direction. Something like so. That looks fine. And that's it. So now we have 4 shape layers converted from a vector logo in After Effects. So this is one thing. So the next, I hide these, no, this one not. I hide these shapes. Let me bring this to the top, which is not important, but for me now, I'd like to have that here. So next is I'd like to pre-compose this. So I go to Layer, Pre-compose, and move all attributes, and I simply call that Layer 1. Okay, so, and I double click the layer. So this is my starting point. And how to come from this shape with no plugins to this result here. If you have focus on the bubble here, so how to do this. And that was a very long process how to figure out how Andrew did that by not using anything but After Effects. But I think we got it, what it is. It's so easy, but you have to have the idea for that. So first, what you need is select your shape layer. First is you need a turbulent noise. Bring that onto your layer. And in our case, we like to go with terrain. And we bring up the contrast to something about 210. And the brightness down to, let's say, minus 230, something like that. Okay? And next is we go to transform and we scale that up to, let's say, 1400, something like that. And now let's adjust these settings a bit, play with the contrast, and so this looks quite cool. And we bring this a little bit down so that this is the result. Okay, so that was the first part. Next is I'd like to get rid of the stroke here. So I go to my stroke. You can select it here and simply unhide that here. Hit OK. Or you can go here to your content, to shape, and you have the stroke and simply can hide it here. So both versions works, so you can go into that. Okay, so this is the first thing, having a turbulent noise on that. The next thing is we need CC ball action. And as we try to do something cool with that, we try to scatter and do things, but nothing works as it should be. And then we got a solution. So we bring the grid space to 0. So this gives me this dotted pattern. And then we change the twist angle. And if you do so, you see that will happen. But there's nothing but this turbulent noise here. So what the heck? Change the axis to blue. And now you see what's going on here. You see that? And this is exactly what we'd like to have. And now if you play with the turbulence settings, or with the size, you see that happens. But how to bring this over time so that it fits perfect and whatever. So we figured out that we have the twist angle, let's say to 130. Give him a straight line here, which is not important, but I'd like to have it so. And now if you go over the contrast, you can play with the position of the ball action. Okay? And that's exactly what we needed. So let's go to something like here, and animate the contrast over time. So hit the stopwatch, go to frame, let's say 5 seconds, and bring the contrast all the way up. Okay? Here we go so far. But we're not finished so far. So this is the result for now. Okay? Let's duplicate the turbulent noise here from the beginning. String D on the keyboard and bring this under the CC ball action. And this is what you get. And change the blend mode to, let's say, soft light. Okay? And now let's play with the first uncheck the stopwatch so that we have no animation going on, and then check what this does for you. So now here you can play with the amount of particles too. So this is the result if you're finished. Okay, here we go. And what we like to have is, again, let's duplicate this layer, string D on the keyboard, and get rid of these two turbulent noise things. And on the first one, let's say this is the last image. I'd like to have a little bit of animation going on there. So I first undo the animation over the contrast, and I go to my transform settings, and I go to the offset. On frame 1, I hit turbulence offset, go to frame, let's say number 10, and offset that, well, let's say over this like so. And may I like to have it a little bit more scaled so that it looks better. This gives me a very cool result so far. Okay, now I can change this also to soft light if I'd like to. So this is the effect, but you see it will blur out everything which is particles is gone white. So that works not for here. Go to normal. I will keyframe it over time. Hit T on the keyboard for opacity. I give him 100%. I drag the keyframe up to, let's say, yeah, second number 5, and bring this all the way down here. Let's say from here. So here we go, and this is the way we animate that. And let's have a look how this will look like. So I go to my comp, and this is what we have so far. Okay. So let's make the layer a 3D layer. Let's bring in a new camera, layer, new camera. Hit OK on the keyboard. And bring in some light. Layer, new light. I'd like to have a point light, and I'd like to have some bluish color, but you choose the color you like to have, of course. Here we go. And I hit OK. Let me bring this light all the way. Oops, sorry. Let's bring this light a little bit to the left side. And let's see. Something like so. That looks quite cool. And this is what we have so far. Okay, it's quite flat. Why is it flat? Because we did not rotate the camera so far. Take the camera tool. You find that normally it looks like this. If you click on that, you see that orbit camera tool, and let's orbit that. And here we go. That looks very cool, and it's also 3D, and you see how that fits and how that places. Okay, so next is I need some glow effects on that, so I go to my effects and presets and hit glow. Here we go. I'd like to have the threshold a little bit something like that, and I'd like to have a copy, string D on the keyboard, and bring up the glow radius to something like that. So far so good. Is much too much glow, but we will adjust that later on. So I have a glow going on here, and the next thing is I'd like to have these particles that comes up to the ground of the virtual plane, something like this here. As you see, this one here, these kind of particles, how to make them come to the top of the layer. So let's go back to our shape layer. And so this is the shape layer. We can name that. So this is the particle layer. And this is the blend layer. I'll blend. Here we go. So this is only the layer we took to put on our turbulent noise to blend that. So let's have a look at these small lines here. For that, I need this layer here, and I simply duplicate my particle layer, string in a keyboard. Let me rename that. It's particle ring, and we can give him number 1 because we need 2 instances of that. So for the particle ring, as you see, we have in the contents of the shape layer, we have a shape, and we have the pass and the stroke and the fill. So in this case, we need the stroke but not the fill. Okay, and let me solo that. So this is what we have so far, and we need a little bit bigger balls for that. So let me bring up the ball size a bit. That looks quite cool. And if you go to your comp layer, you will see this is the result so far. Maybe this is a bit too thick regarding the line. It depends on what you like to have it, but you can achieve that by playing with the stroke width. Here, go to stroke and then bring it to something like, let's say 3 should be fine. That looks like a very thin line, but we got all these bubbles here, which looks very, very edgy. So I don't like that style. So I'd like to have it to something like an electric wipe or something like that. So I use CC vector blur for that. CC vector blur. Here we go. You put on and give him a amount from, let's say, something small, something like 5 or so. So now I got this very thin line that grows up until it fits to the edge. Okay, and of course you can play with the turbulent settings. If you don't like it this way, you don't have to use this. So you can play with the transform, for example, with the scaling. So maybe we scale that a little bit higher, so it got more lines going on there. And if we now go back to our comp, you see that looks quite cool. So now the line comes up and appears and everything as it should be. So this is so far so good. So we need another copy of that ring number 1, string in a keyboard. And I'd like to have, I want to change a few things. So under the CC ball action, I will change the twist angle to something lower so that we get a little space here. And of course, I'd like to change also, let's say, a little bit of scaling in the turbulent noise. So go to transform and play with the scaling, so they get a bit different results. So that looks quite fine. And I'd like to have another copy, string D on the keyboard, and in this case I simply slightly adjust the twist angle again, something like that, so that it fits cool to the design. So that's it for so far. The next thing is I will unhide my particles. And now let's take care about all these weird things here going on. So as you see, everything we did is right now black, and that is definitely not what we like to have. And let's get rid of these things. So this is my final thing for this middle bubble, and I select all of my 3 rings here and change the transfer mode from normal to add. And now everything is white. And the next thing now we have to take care of are these white particles here. And I select the particle layer and I go to my blending mode, which is soft light, and we will change that to darken. And now we play with the opacity until we get a result that looks quite cool. And I think that's more what we like to have. Here we go. And let's have a look how that looks in our comp. Here we go. Let me preview that. Looks cool, but definitely not cool enough. So back to our layer 1, and this is definitely too dark, so we go to the particle layer and to the opacity and bring this much more up, something like so. That should give a very cool result. Okay, let's have a look. Sorry. Now the glow is too much, but this is, as I said before, we will change later on. So let's give here the radius down to 0 on the first glow. I should type it, huh? And let's have a look at the threshold. Something like 89 should be fine, and the intense a little bit down. And here we go with the threshold also, and bring the glow amount up. And let's say what we can do here. So I don't like these edges here, it's just too bright. Here we go, let's have a look. Yeah. That looks much more the way we like to have that, but it's not perfect. So let's go back to our layer 1, and it doesn't look so fine because of this balls here, and there's not so much contrast. So what we do on the particle layer finally is go to the CC ball action and bring the ball size down. Here we go, something like so. That looks much more organic. And now if you go to your comp, let me unhide the rings again. Here we go. And now if you go to your comp and play with the glow settings, so I can crank this up here a little bit, bring this to something like so, and also the threshold here it down, so this gives me a more organic view. Let me preview that. So this is exactly what we'd like to achieve. We got these organic lines here, and you got the idea how to achieve that, how to play with the noise settings to achieve this effect. And of course you can orbit the camera during you do that. So if you're on your shape layer, you can orbit that around. So don't overdo that because it's a two-dimensional effect. But if you are on a cool line, you can always have these three-dimensional organic looking, and this three-dimensional effect. And yeah, that's exactly what we did with all of the other shape layers. So you can repeat that by using the shape layers and applying all these effects to your shape layer. What we also did is we blend that, so we unhide the blend layer here. If you go to your layer, so we unhide that. So finally we over blended this by our turbulent noise layer, and that looks then like this way. So make sure to adjust so it comes from here with all the particles going on there, and then like some smoky edges coming over here, it makes a woof, and here we go. So it finally the particles disappear, and you got the final result. So that's how to achieve this effect. So what else can you do with the shape layers? So if you double click on your layer 1, so these are my particles and this is the blend. So I select all of my particle layers and pre-compose them. Layer, pre-compose, and call that particle 1, which is the first of my shape layers. Move all attributes, hit OK, and I go to my comp, and from this layer here I use these both glow effects, Control X on the keyboard, so I cut that and bring this directly onto that particle layer, string V, paste that. So this is what I got, and this is how it looks. So it takes the glow to that kind of level, so you can play with the glow settings inside that layer. Okay, you can adjust them. Much more precise than in the 3D layer, and you get the same cool result. Okay, so this is one thing we did. And why we did that too is I go to my particle layer and go to my particle, string C on the keyboard, and I'll go back to my layer number 1. This is which contains the particle 1 precomposition, and string V on the keyboard, so I paste my particle layer one more time and simply get rid of all of these effects, so that I have simply nothing than my particle layer, which is this orangish one. And if I select that, you will see I have here my contents, and I have my shape, and I have my path and my stroke. The path is shown, the stroke is hidden, and I'd like to have the stroke. Here we go. Let me go to the stroke, and let me select the particle layer. And where are my strokes here? Maybe let's delete that stroke, delete, and go here to add, and then stroke, and there's no stroke. Nicely. So this is the cool thing doing recording tutorials. If something not works the way you like to have it during you record that, so I delete that particle layer for now, and I go back to my particle 1 precomposition, and I probably need this ring, so I can choose the ring for now. String C on the keyboard, go back to my layer and paste that, string V, and for now I should have this ring. Let me get rid of these effects. Here we go, and here's my ring, and that's what I'd like to show you. And this is because I did why I did the precomposition, because I don't like to have this ring affected by the glow. And so I can go into the ring, I can go to the content, and I can play with these things, which are very cool features you get with the shape layers. So I go first to my stroke. I like to have a stroke width from 1 particles. This is one thing I like to have. And and the last thing, the next thing, I like to have some dashes here. So I put this plus icon here, and now you can, let me hide that, and now you can see I got some dashes. I can play with the dash length, and the next thing I like to have is add a offset. Here we go, and this is I'm blind. You see it, right? Offset path. Sorry, I was blind for now, and I like to offset that. And here you have the option to put in an amount of copies, so you can do weird things. I like to have 2 copies, and I'd like to have a copy offset from something about 2, let's say 1, better, and the amount something like this. Looks quite cool. So, and now these things are not affected by the glow effect, which is quite cool. If you go to the comp, you see it here. So you got these lines coming up, and so you can do dotted lines, you can do perfect circles, you can do whatever you like to with these shape instances, and you can even do some weird things like we have here. So this is nothing else than a rectangle over the circular shape. I can see, you can show you that here inside. So we have this thing. This is I think this must be the shape layer. No, where we go, this is the shape layer. We put that on. We simply put in a rectangle Here you see a rectangle path, and we use the CC cross blur to blur that. Here you see this is the effect, and in the final comp it looks quite as a part of the background image, and that's so that's how we achieve that. And back to our project. So sorry, here we are. And so this is the reason why we don't put these lines into the particle comp with the glow effect on it. Okay. So another thing which is quite cool, and I was also very impressed by watching that on Andrew's site. But to give you the idea is, let me go back to our comp and show you what else you can do with this very cool technique. So what else is possible? Let me showcase you that. I bring in a shape layer. Simply click here and bring in a shape layer, something like that. And I need a turbulent noise. And let me go to, again, let's say terrain, and play with the contrast and the brightness settings so that it fits to something we'd like to have. So this is too hard. Let's say something which is closer to brightness and contrast. Something like that should be fine. Okay. So now let's bring in again the ball action. Here we go. And yeah, let's see what happens if we now, by using the blue channel, play with the twist axis. And that looks not so spectacular, but let's bring in the grid spacing to 0 and maybe decrease the size of the bubbles. And this is what we have so far. Now bring the fill color of your shape layer to black and put in a gradient ramp. Here we go. And bring this on top of the effect stack and change the turbulent noise modifier, but you don't need to change that. As you see here, it flattens out. Okay. And you just simply have to invert that colors if you like to. So you can invert that. And here you got a very cool result. And the next thing is we'd like to animate the turbulence over time. So go to transform, go to the turbulence offset. Let's go to frame number 1 and hit the stopwatch. Here we go, here we go. Where's the offset? Here, offset turbulence. And go to frame number 7 seconds, for example, and bring this, no, wrong direction, bring this all the way down to something like that. And as you see, we are on a 2D field, so make the shape layer 3D. And maybe you like to orbit your camera. And you see, this is a very cool effect. Let's zoom in a little bit. Here we go. And let me overdo this a little bit and give him a glow. Here we go. And another instance, D, and bring up the intensity and the radius. So here we go. And yeah, let's preview that. And you see, you got the idea what you can do with this technique. If you'd like to have more lines or less lines than here, simply increase the grid space on the CC ball action. So let's do so. If you increase that, you get this, and maybe you bring down the ball size, of course, to something like so. And here you got this effect. And if you like to overdo this one more thing, you can bring in some CC Force motion blur. And because these things are all moving, let me first bring the grid space a little bit more down. So let's say 5 should be giving me a much better result than this. Yeah, that looks quite cool. And bring the shutter angle to something like 500, and you will see you got motion blur going on over here. And of course it takes some time to render, but you see, oh, let me bring the motion blur, of course, before the glow. That's quite important. So here we go. And you can overdo that, and of course you can build other cool particle effects by playing with the turbulent noise. So maybe you like to increase the contrast, so you got a much higher wall on the first, or decrease the brightness, so you got a much weird thing here that looks quite cool. So if you have a look at that, so this is up to you, and hope you got the idea how to build this very cool particle effect with, of course, no particles. If you like us, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to check out our cool products. We have, let me show you that, we have a very cool plugin called Platoon Texturing Tutorial. Sorry, this is how to sell your own products. We have a very cool plugin for After Effects called Platoon to texturize and to do some glitch effects. And we have a very cool new plugin. It's called Transition Master, and it's for building up your own transitions inside After Effects or DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro or Nuke. Make sure to check these products out because they are very cool. And yes, thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed that. See you in the next tutorial. My name is Oliver, and bye.